Hello, I'm Regina McCann Hess, and welcome to our Women in Wealth series. Today, we're going to talk about retirement and not just how do you save for retirement, but when you actually are getting towards retirement and what are some of the decisions you have to make. Obviously, you need to be working with a financial planner to make sure you're going to have enough money to last you throughout retirement. There's obviously a difference between needing to keep working and choosing to keep working. And if you're doing really smart things along the way and working with somebody to help guide those decisions, you may be able to make that decision earlier and maybe retire early, or sometimes you have to retire a little bit later. It just depends on, the situation that you're in and what you're dealing with, because everybody is handed a different set of circumstances that they do need to handle. But the ability to take an early retirement with peace of mind and choosing when and, whether or not you want to work is very, very valuable. And even if you're retiring at what we call quote, quote, normal retirement age, it still is powerful to be able to decide whether or not you do want to continue working, or do you want to continue working part-time or volunteering, or, just, not working at all. So those are all great decisions that you have to make. The other thing is, you want to make sure your retirement decision aligns with your visions and values. And the best way to set that up is, having flexibility and luxury of choice is to plan ahead. And that means smart financial planning, as well as reviewing your visions and values for retirement. Now, if you're married or if you have a domestic partner, it's crucial to discuss your visions and values together, because one spouse might be thinking they're going to Key West and buying a sailboat. Meanwhile, the other one is thinking, well, hey, let's move to Montana and live off the grid in a cabin. Obviously, those are two drastic differences, but that's just an example. But it just goes to show you that they don't have to be drastic differences, but both parties are needing to be part of that conversation, because they may have slightly different variations of their visions and values, or they may have drastic ones like that. So you just do need to have that conversation. It's common that you're going to find two totally different ideas of what retirement looks like. I mean, I ask people that question all the time: what is your vision of retirement? And I think I get a different answer every time, almost every time. And it's fascinating. And it's awesome that we're able to do that. So let's work on that first. What are your visions and values? Also, you want to explore how your family relationships may affect your planning process. Have you secured insurance and documented agreements to soften the financial impact of an unexpected death or a divorce? Is it possible that you have aging parents that you may also need to be taken care of while you're in retirement, or as you're about to retire? And then also, the kids come into play. Are you going to want to move where they are or closer to where they are? And especially once they have grandchildren, what does that look like for you? And, I've had those conversations with, people who are thinking about retirement, and they think one way, and they're like, oh, their kids are fine, just visit them. And then once those grandkids come along, holy Moses, that conversation changes. So you definitely want to think through that and talk through it. It's all about the communication. Also, life may throw you different, apples that you have to catch, or whatever the saying is, or it's just going to throw you different things that you need to handle or juggle. So you want to build contingencies into your plan and be ready to change if needed. Obviously, family first type of conversations need to come into play, and what's most important for you and your family. The next thing we're going to talk about is replacing your paycheck with a playcheck. Now, that is a famous saying that Tom Hegna coined. He's a retirement expert who's written tons of books. I listen to him a lot at different seminars and conferences that we go to. It's basically when you stop getting your normal paychecks. Look, we're used to getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or once a month, or some people get them weekly. But guess what? When you retire, those paychecks go away. until sign up for Social Security. You get that once a month. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, then you'll get that once a month. But for most people, and during our professional lives, we're getting paid regularly, and usually every 2 weeks. But again, once you retire, that reliable income stream goes away. So if you have planned well, you can decide on, which savings or investment bucket to dip into, how deep, and how often. Plus, you're also going to know when and in what order to turn on your pension benefits, your Social Security checks, and also when to have to take your required minimum distributions from your retirement plans. Now, with those resources in place, retirement income usually dips below what folks earned while they're working. Obviously, we all would like to have 100% of our earned income while we're also in retirement. But in general, usually people target 60 to 80% of that to be realistic. Obviously, if we're able to replace 100% of it, and we've done a lot of planning, a lot of saving along the way, it can be an opportunity for some people, and that's fantastic. But we just have to make choices along the way, right? We have kids, we have family members, and we also have to save for retirement. So everyone's situation is a little bit different. And then you just have to make decisions about what your retirement's going to look like, right? Go back to those visions and values. And, you may be a little light on what you want to do as far as your savings. Maybe if they're a little light, I'm not saying you have to ditch your travel plans, but you may have to plan it right. You may have to think about, being very careful about not overspending on the front end of your retirement so that, would leave you no way to make it up for you when you're, 85. To avoid that scenario, you're going to need to calculate what percentage of your current income you can expect to bring in each month and how to adjust for patterns and expectations, so that you don't run out of resources. So one of the things I talk about in my book is when to turn the tap on and in what order. When I was writing Superwoman Wealth, How to Become Your Own Financial Hero, these are some of the things I talk about. If you're one of the lucky few who has a pension, the first thing you do is turn that on. I work with a lot of teachers, and whenever I have a teacher come in and we do financial planning, I'm like, yes, we have pensions. Makes it a little bit easier, right? Most of us don't have pensions though, so we have to figure it out a different way. Although we do also, most of us have the opportunity to take Social Security, it's very, very important to determine when to take that Social Security and when to hold off on taking that Social Security. And I like to beat my drum about Social Security. You do not take it at 62 when it becomes first available, because you give 8% up per year permanently of your benefits. So, that could be 35, 40% of your benefit that you just poof, gave away. So a lot of times when I'm working with people, I say, hey, let's consider either age 67 or 70. And if you're married, one, may take it at 67, then the higher earner takes it at 70 for various reasons. I'll do a whole podcast just on that. And I have, but it's very, very important on how you take your Social Security and, not taking it as early as the government says you can. Then you also want to, think about so you're going into retirement, you're going to have Social Security at some point. You may or may not have a pension. Where else are you going to get your money from? So one of the good things about planning for retirement is that you can create what I call a bucket of money that you can dip into to offset your cash flow needs. So let's just say that you're targeting to spend $100,000 in retirement, and one spouse gets $38,000 for Social Security, and the other spouse is targeting $33,000 in Social Security. So right now you can subtract both of those from 100,000 and your gap is $29,000. That's what you have to figure out. How are you going to find $29,000 every year to offset the gap in what you want to spend? So while you're planning for your retirement, while you're gearing up for retirement, one of our buckets is a cash bucket where we want to keep at least 2 years of cash flow needs in that bucket. So for this case, we would want $58,000 of cash available so that we have 2 years worth of spending that we're going to need, so that if the market is down, we do not have to sell in a down market, but we also know where we're going to get our cash flow from. Now, what replaces that as we're going forward is you have two other buckets, which are hopefully refilling the cash flow bucket. But that's a lot of work, and that's what we do while we're planning for retirement. So 2 years of rainy day spending cash. And guess what? Before COVID, a lot of financial planners may not have had at least 2 years. Some financial planners will have up to 5 years worth of cash available, which is not a bad idea. But pre-COVID, I think we were a lot more comfortable with maybe 1 year of cash. But now, COVID told us you never know what's going to happen. Unexpected events can happen and they will happen, and we can't always predict what is coming. So having that short-term bucket always makes it easier to calmly ride out market volatility, since market values typically recover within 2 years of a major market disruption. Obviously, there's occasional case where that's not the situation, but in general, it is. You're also probably starting to see the puzzle of retirement finances, how to carefully pace and order and ration access to different income buckets to help keep those funds growing and stable as long as possible. Now, also, you do have the opportunity, even though, you don't have to take money out of your IRAs or 401ks before you're 73, or in some people's case, 75. You could still use the dividends from those plans to help offset some of your retirement income needs. Now, obviously, you're over 59 and a half and all that fun stuff, and you have to pay taxes on that as it comes out. But that is an option for you. And obviously, first place you would take could be your non-retirement assets. Use the dividends from there to, offset some of that cash flow needs. But, those are some options for doing what you need to do to replace that cash and create that paycheck. One of the other things we talked about with some of our clients is downsizing. And obviously, when you first retire, it doesn't mean you have to downsize right away. You may have downsized when the kids, flew the coop and got married and are doing their own thing. But if you haven't, it might be a good time to start at least having that conversation. How much does it cost to stay in your current home? Are you still paying a mortgage? When will that mortgage be paid off? If you don't, own your home, are you renting? Either way, if you're renting or you're owning your home, even with the mortgage paid off, those costs will increase because rent's going to increase. And if you own the home, your property taxes are definitely going to increase too. So either way, those costs go up. So sometimes downsizing to a smaller home or a ranch style house can not only help your budget, it can also set you up for like a little bit more of a sustainable, independent living. And that also could help you stay in your home longer, because that's going to take us to our next conversation, which is about healthcare. And people don't realize it, but healthcare is almost the biggest expense in retirement. Medicare obviously makes it a little less expensive for health insurance, versus, going out and getting health insurance on your own. However, it's not free. It's not cheap. I mean, because you do have to pay. Part A is free. Part B, you do have to pay a premium for, but there's also the supplementals or the Medicare Advantage. Some of those say there's no premium, but then maybe their copays are higher. So there's still expense in there somewhere. So that's what you also have to factor into how much of a budget are you going to put towards healthcare, and not just your premiums, because you're going to have copays and things like that. Okay. We talk about cash flow shifts, reducing your expenses by maybe 20 to 40%. Sounds like a lot. I mean, that would be a challenge for anybody. But there's also some savings, cost savings when you do enter retirement. You're not driving to work every day. So you're saving some gas there, where less wear and tear on your car. Maybe you don't need two cars at some point, maybe not right away, but maybe you go down to one car at one point. That's one car payment, one car maintenance, and it decreases your car insurance premiums too. You also don't have to update your professional wardrobe. So you're not having to go out and, what's the new trend that you have to look professional in for this season. You also may have had other career related expenses, travel, all that stuff that, sometimes is not reimbursed by your company, but, it still costs you money to go out. Plus, you're also not putting into your 401k or retirement plans at that point, right? So even though that's savings for you, it's still an expense that you're not going to have. So that's another way that we can factor a lower cost of living. Also, some of the smaller expenses or the smaller everyday habits, if you maybe eliminate or decrease some of them, they actually can have a big habit. I know talking with people and go through your credit card statements for the past 6 months, you and your bank statements, you're going to see so much spending. And you're like, what is that? I just looked at a credit card statement for somebody, and 1 month they had 4 different Apple charges and they didn't even know what they were for, right? So there's things like that. There's all the streaming services. How many TV stations do you need? Do you need cable? Maybe just pay for the internet and get the streaming, and that could cut a couple $100 a month. So little things like that we don't really think of on a normal day-to-day basis, but may help, cut some of the expenses to get it more in line with what your, retirement cash flow should look like. Also, this is a great exercise 2 years before you retire. This is something I talk to my clients about. I coach them to gradually use less and less of their paycheck. This helps them get used to not having a paycheck while also trimming back frivolous spending. We're not saying to not spend at all. We're just saying, you have to, factor in what's going to be important and what can you give up. And then sometimes people come up with some clever ways to still enjoy doing what they love, but also spending less. I know a couple of my lady clients will go out to lunch instead of dinner. They get the same portions, and buying a lunch is actually less expensive on the menu than the dinner. And then they take half of it home and have it for dinner. So you get 2 meals for one at a lower price. Thank you, ladies, for those ideas. It really works out pretty well. You also, this is a big thing. You have to set boundaries with adult children. Some clients are still, or parents, I should say, are still in the habit of helping support the lifestyles or the crises of their adult kids. And obviously, we all want to help our kids, right? But sometimes it's ingrained in the family dynamics, where some people are generally showering their kids with money and trips and things like that, or focusing on an inheritance for them, which is great. But if they're doing it at where they're not going to be able to enjoy their retirement, that becomes an issue. Sometimes it's just an emotionally driven habit. Obviously you have kids, you've been doing it your whole life, you're taking care of your kids, but at some point, you gotta let those little birdies leave the nest. I still have 3 in my nest. Easy for me to say, right? I might be eating my own words at one point. But people secretly sometimes want permission to start saying no. And I give them the permission to say no, and I allow them to use me as the heavy or the bad guy. I will say stuff like, hey, your kids are adults. They have the rest of their lives to earn their money. Meanwhile, your earning days are over. You can't go back out and make this money again. You're living on a fraction of what you used to, and you need to protect what's left. So I tell them to I give them permission to fully blame me. I say, when you're with your kids, say, my financial advisor told me that now that I'm retiring or that I'm retired, I'm no longer able to pay for things like that. And then I'm the bad guy, which is fine. That's what I want you to do. It's hard to do that. It's hard to say no to your kids. But you got to start somewhere. You got to start protecting your little nest egg because you need it. You need to you're going to be in retirement for what, 20, 30 years. You need that money to last a really, really long time. All right. Values and visions. I talked about that. Family togetherness. I'll tell you, talking about that, like, obviously I'm very family centric, but I hate being cold, right? So my thought is, hey, I want to be somewhere warm in the winter months so I don't have to deal with this cold, but I also want to be near my family. Is there a way to, make that work together? I don't know. We're going to find out. But everybody has their own thing. I also do volunteer. Am I going to be able to volunteer? Where can I do it? Obviously, you can volunteer anywhere. I have a client who actually volunteers for Habitat for Humanity. He's in his 80s and he goes out there and helps build houses, and it makes him happy. It keeps him physically and mentally fit, and it fulfills him. And he's serving his community. So, I mean, those are great things to be able to say and to be able to do. It also helps avoid social isolation. We always have to worry about that with our retirees. It's not just about hobbies and adventure. We want to make sure that you are with people, you're having lunch with people, having an ice cream with someone, just, joining group activities. You don't want to, even the most introverted people, you still need to have some people time. If you don't have a network of family, friends, or neighbors in place, social isolation can be a big problem in retirement, especially later down the line. And I will tell you, nothing was as bad as COVID for a lot of my retirees. They were in a lot of these retirement villages and they were literally locked in there like prisoners, and family wasn't allowed in. It was awful. And the rates of depression skyrocketed. So very, very important to make sure you do not get socially isolated, join groups, clubs, playing cards, book reading clubs, whatever you can do, feed into that social support, and avoid that social isolation. Also, remember, as women, we are expected to live longer than men, usually about 5 years longer. So it's even more important for us to have a robust social support network. So very, very important. It can also protect you. Those social circles can protect you against boredom, some loneliness, kind of safety in numbers too, if you want to go do an event together. Those are the kind of things that you could do with friends, and in a group, you feel a little bit more safe. So those are really, really important things that will help people in retirement. The other thing is aging in place, like I said, downsizing earlier, but picking a house that, whether or not it has one level, but also has the ability, if it does have two levels, is there an elevator? Are there things that can in that house that you can change that can help you stay in that house longer so that your health stays with you as well? With that, I am going to let you go. I threw a lot out at you, not just money, but things that you really do need to think about for retirement. And I think our call to action today is start thinking about your vision of retirement and what's that really mean to you, and what's that really mean to your spouse, and have the conversation together. Don't just think that you know what each other wants, but talk about it, see where you're same, see where you're different, and see how to merge the two. Okay. And with that, thank you so much for joining me. Again, I'm Regina McCann Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and my website is forgewealth.com. And my social media is Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Forge Wealth, and LinkedIn is Regina McCann Hess. Go make it a great day.